I prefer to walk around if it's okay.
Yeah. Rahulji has kindly agreed to answer a few questions. May I request Mr. Ajay Sriram, who is the Vice President of CII and also the Chairman and Managing Director of DCM Sriram Consolidated Limited, to ask the first question, please.
Thank you, Adi. Rahulji, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, and it's wonderful to... Yeah. Thank you, Adi. Rahulji, it's wonderful to hear you share your thoughts of the vision of India. Thank you very much for coming here and being with us.
Thank you.
The issue which I wanted to ask of how we can further improve is the issue of center-state relationships. Based on our constitution and the federal structure, the states have their own rules and regulations, center has their own rules and regulations, and very often economic development and progress gets hampered because of lack of cohesion or lack of a unified thinking of how to carry a particular project or a particular vision forward. Do you think there's something we can do to actually increase the harmony?
Would you like me to give you the political answer, the actual structural answer? No, it will be honest. Both answers will be honest. One is a structural answer, practical answer of what is actually going on in the country, right? And it's slightly complicated, so you'll have to bear with me. Is that okay?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
What's happening in India today, and the key is the 73rd and 74th Amendment. The 73rd and 74th Amendment basically created a third tier of government, a structure below the MLA and the MP. And what is taking place in India is a devolution of power to this third tier. And a lot of the tension you see is actually the tension that is coming, the challenge that is coming actually from the panchayat. Let me give you the numbers, approximate numbers. I'm an MP. I get 5 crores a year. I have 700 pradhans who work with me. Each one of those pradhans is working with a couple of crores. That's the difference in power. I have power to make policy. He has tremendous power at the local level. And what he is saying, the pradhan, he's saying this system is too closed for me. It's not good enough. There's 3 million of us, and we have no voice in this big system. That's the pressure that is driving Manrega. That's the pressure that's driving RTI. That's the pressure that is changing our development paradigm and making it more granular. There is a challenge being thrown to MPs and MLAs by the Pradhan. And our political parties are not designed for Pradhans. They are designed for MPs and MLAs. That's the problem. So it is not a state center problem. It is actually a devolution of power problem. And until we actually start to build the structures that bring these guys' voices in, we are going to have this type of policy, this type of conflict. What's actually happening, if you want it at the ground level, what's actually happening is that the Pradhan is the builder. He's the guy who does the job in the village. When we fight elections, we go to the Pradhan and we say, support us. But the Pradhan doesn't actually have any power in the political party. That's the problem. And it's a problem that, let me put it bluntly, it's a problem the Pradhan is going to solve. He's not going to worry about whether there's an MP in front of him or an MLA in front of him. He's the last mile. So what we have to do, the architecture we have to build, is one which brings the Pradhan in. And that, frankly, other than the left parties and some of the Dravidian parties, none of the other parties have. So what you're actually seeing is a structure where the grassroots are completely disconnected. They're not connected to the political system. And that's where the dysfunctionality is coming. The Pradhans have the power to change this, and they'll do it. The really interesting question in Indian politics is, can we do something to our political parties so that we can absorb these guys in? And believe me, the moment you absorb these guys in, very simple thing will happen. Higher level policy will be dealt with by the MPs and MLAs. Lower level policy will be dealt with by the Pradhan. And a lot of the problems that are coming in our system today are because I am dealing with low level stuff. That our ministers are doing stuff that is actually not their job. It's the job of a local representative far outside. So until we actually open this political system out, this dysfunction will exist. I don't know if that's a complicated answer, but that's actually the answer.
Thank you. May I ask Dhruv Soni, past president CII, to ask the next question?
Thank you. Rahulji, to get onto another platform, something that you started with, which is the energy of our rivers. My question is on one of the major problems in India today, which is water and wastewater. We really have not a conception of how bad the situation is. Punjab with uranium in it, and West Bengal with arsenic. We need another mind shift change. We need an exponential realization of this problem. Now, in the view of your partnership, this is a classic example of where civil society, business, and government have to work together. It's something that's not thought of. Everyone thinks water is a free resource, and that's where we need to.
See, this is a very important question. But it's not only about water. It's about every single thing. I raised it here about the university curriculum. It's about every single thing. We have not built the systems that actually integrate voice. Tell me something, is there a systematic way for the voice of business to come into government? Not just, I am a friend of Montek's or I know Montek, but a systematic, structural way for you to say, listen, this is what we think, this is what should happen. Is there such a system? No, the CII is not in the politics. You have your own system. And of course, that's a very effective system. I'm saying in the political machine, in the government machine, does such a system exist? Right? And it's not only in business. It's for the poor guy. It's for the local representative. There is no conversation taking place. There is no structural conversation. I sit in on some of the committees in Parliament. Right? The committees call whoever they want. It's totally based on what they feel like. There has to, why isn't there a systematic way that, listen, if we're trying to make this bill, then these are all the people who have to come into the room. Institutionalized. And what I work with and what I struggle with is moving from this paradigm of it's about one man or it's about another man to moving to structures that actually bring in voice. What you're talking about essentially is a lack of the ability to deliver your voice in the system. Institutionally, which is very different. See, 50 years ago, our system was small. You could do it without institutional structures. Now our system is too big. The job of an MP is completely transformed. Even if I compare my job 8 years ago, it is a completely different job. Because the structure has changed. And the system is not responding to the structure. The political parties are not responding to this structure. I've been working in the Youth Congress for 3 years. Let me tell you what we've done. And it's not appreciated because it's not very well understood. And maybe I haven't gone out and explained it in detail. What we've essentially done, do you know what happens, how elections in the United States are fought? When President Obama fought an election, everybody comes in, all members come in and vote. It's called a primary. That is an expression of people's will. People come in and say, I want Sunil to lead this, or I want Montek to lead this. The legislative engine in India is basically 5,000 people. 5,000 people determine everything, right? How many people choose these 5,000 people? In my party, how many people do you think choose them? There's 4,000 MLAs. There's 600, 700 MPs. These guys drive this country. In my party, in the BJP, in the BSP, if you combine all these parties together, how many people do you think choose these legislators? In the whole country, including, I've done this, in the whole country, including the BJP, Congress, pushing it hard, 200 to 300 people. Now, how can you talk about state-center relations if 200 people are defining those Vidhan Sabhas and Lok Sabhas? You've got to go all the way up the value chain, and they block you all the way up. That's the problem. If you open out that value chain, most of your problems will be solved there. And what this is doing to you is imposing huge costs. And we call it corruption. It's imposing massive costs on you. No one talks about this. People talk about Rahul Gandhi. People talk about, individuals. No one talks about, listen, let's open this thing out. And you open this thing out, large numbers of your problems will be fixed far, far away by lower level people. That's what I'm working on in the Congress Party. How can we bring in voice of people? How can we systematically set up structures so you can talk to us? That's not happening. You're a wonderful institution, right? Where is your counterpart in the government? Inside the government. Where is your counterpart that brings people into the committee? Doesn't exist. So you're empowered, but you're actually disempowered. And that's all the way down. That's the poorest guy in the village. He's also disempowered. So those are some of the things that we have to think about as a country. And when I talk about partnership, that's what I'm talking about. Not what my individual view on something is. It's irrelevant. There are 1 billion people in this country. It's not important what Rahul Gandhi thinks. It's important what the 1 billion people think. And that mechanism isn't there, it's not working. So then we go into this model where you're going to have the one guy who's going to come and he's going to fix everything. He's going to come on a horse. That's the model, that's the Indian model. He's going to come on a horse, sun's going to be in the background, there's 1 billion people waiting, he's coming in, and everything's going to be nice. No, it's not going to work like that. I like to tell the truth. I like to tell the truth, and I like to say what I see. Give me all the power you want. Give one individual all the power you want. Give him everything. He cannot solve the problems of 1 billion people. Cannot be done. Give 1 billion people the power to solve their problems. It will be done immediately. And we got to move this debate. I mean, I get frustrated. We got to move this debate. It can't be about one person. The chief minister of Assam has fixed everything. This is ridiculous. It's got to be about what are the structures we are building, what are the machines we are putting into place, how are we bringing voice into the system? And none of that debate takes place. And frankly, I get frustrated. I read the newspapers, I'm like, okay, it's always about a person. It's never about voice of people. It's never about voice of business. It's never about voice of the telecom industry. Systematically, not individually. And listen, if you're expecting Manmohan Singh ji or someone else to solve everything here. You're going to keep expecting it. It's as simple as that. And okay, we can keep expecting it. It's a nice way to move. But if you want to solve it, you got to move from the person. I am irrelevant. I am 1 out of 1 billion Indians. So is Montec. So is some of the others here. Our power is only going to come when we channel that thing, that river of Indian people. When we channel that thing and when we give that thing voice, then you see the businesses you build. You see what happens. You will be sitting on monsters the size that cannot be imagined. We talk about competing with the Americans, the Chinese, is that. You open up the voice of the Indian people and you see what happens. You see what comes out. You cannot imagine it. Because I go to the villages and I see these people sitting there. Nothing is working. There's no road, there's no this, nothing. And they're sitting there and say, Bhaiya, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories. I went into this Jhuggi Jhopdi on one of my tours, Maharashtra. Sit down. And woman is sitting there, young, 25. 2 little kids. So I said, what's going on? What are you doing? I'm a manual laborer. Okay. Where's your husband? He's working outside. Okay. I started talking to the kids. I said, what do you want to be? He said, I want to join the IAS. I was like, that's interesting. Another fellow sitting there, I said, क्या करना है? मैं businessman बनना चाहता हूँ. Fine. Then I looked at the mother, I said, listen, it's not happening. You've got this nice dream. It's not working. I look, you're living in a jhopdi. Your husband's there working, manual labor. You're doing manual labor. I wanted to provoke her, see what she said. I said, ye to nahi hoga. She says, देखो, मैं काम करती हूँ 8-10 घंटे, वो काम करता है 8-10 घंटे, और ये दोनों भी काम करते हैं. ये आईएएस में जाएगा और ये बिजनेस बनाएगा. Now, she had no reason to say that. To me, this is irrational. I'm on her side. I want her to succeed, but I'm saying this is irrational. She doesn't believe that. She's absolutely convinced that India is going to give her the opportunity. That's what you're sitting on. You unleash that, your businesses will go like this, instantly. What is holding you back, frankly, is that the political system is clogged and it is not responding to you. Why is it that pretty much everything, the smallest decision, has got to be taken by the senior most guy? Why? Sometimes I look, I'm sitting there and I'm an MP. I'm doing the job of a Pradhan. Somebody is saying to me, Bhaiya, road chahiye. It's not my job. But the system is so closed that Pradhan actually doesn't have the ability to do the job. So what you got to do is, road banani hai, chalo bhaiya, Lucknow chalo. That's your problem. It's an advantage. If we want to speak openly, there are advantages that arise out of it. But you are not seeing the massive disadvantage that arises out of it. It's much bigger. Because you're forced to deal all the way up the value chain. And as you go up the value chain, it's more and more complicated. So that's how I see it. People say, my guys have told me in our conversation, they said, listen, don't go into the India-China cliche. Don't go into it. I'm not going to listen to them. I want to go into it for a reason. See, there are two types of systems. There is a centralized system, and there's a decentralized system. China is a centralized system. They call it the dragon. You can see it, it's very clear. It's big, it's powerful. It builds big structures that are visible. And people call us an elephant. You know, they make that comparison, they call it the elephant and the dragon, right? They call it an elephant. We're not an elephant. We're a beehive. We're a beehive. And it's funny, but think about it. I'll tell you why we're a beehive. Which one is more powerful? An elephant or a beehive? No. Between an elephant and a beehive, which is more powerful? No, the answer is they can't be compared. The power applies itself in a completely different way. We have to understand what we are. We have to understand where our power comes from. You know, I went to one of these talks, and the Chinese Prime Minister's secretary came up to me. Can you just come here one second? The Chinese Prime Minister's secretary came up to me, and she said, sorry, he's the secretary. So the Chinese Prime Minister's secretary came up to me in one of these talks, and she says to me, Mr. Gandhi, tell me, sorry, I hope you don't mind. No. She says, tell me, Mr. Gandhi, why is it that everyone worries about China and nobody worries about India? So I said, well, why don't you tell me? And she says, you know, Mr. Gandhi, because China is more powerful than India. I said, that's interesting. I said, show me your hand. Sorry, I'm going to have to do this. I said, show me your hand. I said, you see, this is how China applies power. When I apply power like this, he feels it. He understands it. And he says, hey, you're holding my hand. You're pressing me down. Now, this is how India applies power. Hold this.
Very true. Very true. Very true.
Right? Now, she looked at me and she was like, she actually saw it, she realized it. We are actually much more powerful than we think. Except, we just don't apply power in a centralized way. There are people doing yoga in New York, dancing around. That's Indian power. You go to a nightclub somewhere in Spain, and there's Amitabh Bachchan on the screen there dancing around. That's Indian power. That's the power of the beehive. Nobody sees it. Sits there, works quietly, little bit of noise in the beehive, that buzzing sound that you hear all the time, bhaiya, this complexity that we're having to deal with. What do we do with this? Montek, it drives him nuts. Right? It drives me nuts. I look at the newspapers, I'm like, why are we talking about these things? This is not important. Opening up the political system is important. Voice is important. Why are we talking about Aishwarya Rai's wedding? Why are we dealing? You know, this is noise. This is the noise of a decentralized system. And this thing that stresses you out, this noise that stresses you out, it stresses me out. It stresses Mr. Bajaj out. It stresses all of us out. And actually, it drives the foreigners crazy because they're not used to it. They have no idea where they've come. Some of these MIT guys came to see me the other day. They sat down and they said, Mr. Gandhi, what is this place? Why are Indians always complaining? Indians are always complaining because they're dealing with complexity. That's what we do, that's what we specialize in. There's no complexity in China. No complexity in China. I'll tell you a story. One fellow came, a friend of mine came from China, Italian guy. He was in shock, just stunned. So I asked him what happened. He says, I was in a bus in China. The bus hit a man. The driver picked up the man and put him on the side of the road, and we carried on. No complexity there. Simple. It is, right? India is complex. And the answers we come up with, the answers Sam comes up with, the answers Jindal comes up with, these are robust answers. They're not simple answers. And the West looks at us and says, give us simple answers. Boss, our environment is not simple. We cannot give you simple answers. But what's happening? And this is what I see as our strength. This is why I'm saying the beehive is a good analogy. What is happening is that all of you are masters of complexity. You're all masters of complexity. You understand complexity. And you're entering a century of complexity. Simple answers in a connected world will not work. This buzzing sound that you don't like, these newspaper stories that drive me nuts, this is your training. This is teaching you to deal with complexity. And this is what is going to give you a competitive advantage like nobody has ever had before. When you go out into the world, and you've dealt with this complexity, and you're dealing with your counterparts in the United States, you're dealing with your counterparts in France and Germany, you're people who are trained in complexity, dealing with people who are trained in simplicity. I'll tell you who'll win. You will win. So a lot of the times we get all worked up and we say, why is this thing not working? So disturbing. There are a lot of things that we need to fix. Structural things, highways, things are slow. And we need to speed them up. It's not good enough to say, complex hai to bhaiya kuch nahi karo. No. You have to push the envelope. You have to do the things Sam did. You got to do the things Nandan did. And you got to push the envelope. But don't forget that all this complexity that actually is stressful, gives us the highest heart attack rates, gives us diabetes, this is very, very good training for a connected world. No better training than this. And if you can thrive here, and if you can build here, like all of you have done, if you can do it here, I'm not worried. You can do it on the moon. So that is the strength of India. It is a completely different system than the American system or the Chinese system or the Japanese system. It is a decentralized system, and its power is soft, unheard, unseen, but it's there. So those are some of the things I wanted to tell you. It's been quite interesting for me, and frankly, I should do this much more often. You get tags in India. See, it's the complexity, simplicity thing. You get a tag. He only cares about poor people. He only cares about rich people. He only cares about middle-class people. He's somebody who looks at Dalits. He's somebody who looks at, tribals. But the reality is that these definitions, these tags, they're just pieces of paper. They're just tags. I have one aim in my life. Okay? It's an accident of fate. I happen to come from a chain of people. DNA, it's the DNA. I come from a chain of people. I've been put in this situation. I've been told, boss, here you are. Okay. Now, I'll tell you one thing. We have to move in this country. from that old idea. The idea we love of the guy on the horse. There's a guy who's going to come on the horse and he's going to come charging through, and we do it all the time. He's going to come charging through and everything in India is going to be fixed. It's not. Said it before. We talk about, I go to Jhansi, I see Rani ki Jhansi. She's a hero. She's a hero. We consider her a hero. But what we forget is that she wasn't the only hero. She's just a representative of those heroes. You don't see those millions of other heroes who actually did the charge. You just see that one hero. What I want to do in my life is very simple. I want to I want to help Indian people give their voice. Wherever I see it. Doesn't matter if it's, Montec or Sunil. Doesn't matter if it's the poorest guy sitting in a village in Amethi. I don't care. The power of this country is 1 billion plus voices. And until we start listening to them, and until we start pushing them into the system, we are not going to generate our true power. That's why I don't like this politics of I'll keep these people out. Let's keep the Biharis out of Mumbai. Just beat them up when they come. Just thrash them. How dare the Biharis come into Mumbai? Absolutely not. Or huge communities. 200 million people. Muslims. You say they don't exist. So we're going to keep them out of the system. It is not sustainable. It is a complete waste of our energy. We have to take everybody together. That is our power. In fact, not only do we have to take everybody who is ours together, we've got to take them all. Our idea is so big that it can carry not only India, it can carry everybody else. And what is the idea? It's a different idea than the idea that prevails in the United States. The idea in India, which was told to us by Gandhiji, repeated again and again and again and again for those who want to hear it, is written in the Gita. Buddha spoke about it. The idea is compassion. What is compassion? It's just listening. Nothing else. It's just listening to what the other person is saying. Not putting a label on him that, boss, he's a rich man, he's a poor man, he's a fool, he's intelligent. No, just listen. Just go out there and listen. If we just start doing that and listening to every single person in this country, this thing will build itself so fast, you won't know what's happened. I'm proud to be an Indian. I love this complexity. It drives me crazy. I got press guys asking me, when you're getting married? Somebody else saying, boss, when you're going to be PM? Somebody saying, no, you're not going to be PM. Somebody saying, maybe you will be PM. There's a good possibility. It's like the American polling charts. This is looking at a 47.3% possibility that he might be PM. These are all irrelevant questions. It's all smoke. The only relevant question in this country is, how can we give our people voice? That's it. Now, I've taken enough of your time. I promise to come back. I'd just like to end by saying one thing. You're the cutting edge in the 21st century. The world has turned. They used to look at us and they used to say, boss, Hindu rate of growth, 3%. India's stuck in this forever. They've been doing it for 3,000 years. Now the Hindu rate of growth is the European rate of growth. That's not a good thing, that's a bad thing. We need to work with everybody. When I say voice, I don't mean just Indian voice. And this is something that we've stopped doing the way we used to. I mean everybody's voice. I mean going to your enemy, your worst enemy, and listening to him and saying, what is it that you're saying? Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. Say it again so I can hear it properly. And this is what we have to get in the habit of doing. Too often we just turn around and say, no, I know it, we know it. This is not our culture. Our ideas flow out of this country when we listen. Go to Japan. Gentleman sitting here in Bihar, 3,000 years ago, fundamentally changed their life because he listened. That's all he did. So when you're doing your work, and you guys are hard-nosed businessmen, I'm not such a hard-nosed politician, but I'm getting there. I don't want to be one. I think it's sad to be a hard-nosed politician. But you're a hard-nosed businessman. Listen to people. Listen to your opponents. Make them your friends. And embrace the complexity of this country. Thank you.